has landed in New York ahead of his scheduled court hearing tomorrow. He faces charges related to alleged hush money paid to adult film actor Stormy Daniels shortly before the 2016 election. Security measures have been put in place in New York, where Trump will spend the night. He's expected to voluntarily surrender to officials in Lower Manhattan. U.S. analyst Brooks Spector joins us for more on Trump's woes. Brooks, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. This is going to be a long story, I'll tell you.
It will be indeed, but thank you so much for making time to speak to us. I mean, firstly, Brooks, is this a surprise that we're seeing this happening to Donald Trump?
No, it's not really a surprise. I mean, we've known for months that he was facing a whole range of legal challenges. This is just one of them. There is. And some people argue that this particular legal circumstance, the paying of hush money, which although hush money or a non-disclosure agreement in return for cash is not illegal, the argument that it was washed through campaign financing and thereby violating those laws is what gives this a particular potency. But it's going to be up to the district attorney to make the case once it goes to actual trial and to make the connections convincing to a jury. Tomorrow's hearing is not the trial. It's what they call the arraignment hearing. And those of you who watch Law and Order and other police and legal procedural on television know what that means. You come in, how do you plead? These are the charges, and then bail is set, and off you go, and the trial date is then set at some point in the future. But just as your intro explains, there are unprecedented security arrangements, coordination between the New York City Police Department, the Secret Service, because Donald Trump still gets a slightly more limited version of Secret Service protection, and there will be hordes of media who want to see somehow some part of this story, although it is not yet clear that they will be allowed in with video cameras, television cameras, into the actual courtroom. The hearing itself, the arraignment hearing, is only going to last about 10 or 15 minutes, but that will have been preceded by the fingerprinting and the taking of the ritual mugshot for police records. Donald Trump will almost certainly not be handcuffed because he will have surrendered voluntarily rather than having been arrested. But then there are at least three other major possibilities. One is the effort by Donald Trump, which was well documented, to try to get the state of Georgia officials, the highest officials dealing with a vote counting, to somehow change the vote so that he would have won that state in the 2020 election. And then there are two sets of charges or two sets of issues that the special prosecutor in the Department of Justice, Jake Smith, is looking at very carefully. One is the role Donald Trump played in the insurrection on the 6th of January 2021 when a mob tried to seize the Capitol building. And the other, of course, is that whole fuss about classified documents, highly classified documents that were only extracted from Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's Florida residence, after much effort and even a search warrant. And even after that, there are allegations that there were efforts to keep some of those documents in spite of the search warrant. So Donald Trump has a lot of legal circumstances to deal with, even though he is now officially running for the Republican Party's nomination for president in the year 2024.
Brooks,
and the primary elections there start in 8 months or so. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Brooks, I wanted to talk about there's two schools of thoughts on this matter, that should the charges stick and then the trial continues, this could easily pave the way for a Trump return, because those who support him will realize that he is being victimized. And the other school of thought is saying, well, this is the end of Trump if these charges stick. What's your take on that, and particularly as far as his bid to be re-elected as president of the United States is concerned?
Well, I mean, there are indeed two schools of thought, but there's also some polling that has been done very recently, which says he's not being treated unfairly, although by a considerable margin, generally, although a majority of people think it may be politically motivated. And if you are a Republican, you are convinced of that. If you're a Democrat or an independent, you're not convinced. One of the challenges for Donald Trump, of course, is in the midst of all these courtroom proceedings and trials and other such things, he is theoretically going to be trying to run a campaign, and his time will be occupied in some way by all the different legal proceedings. But also, it may well be that people get tired and get bothered and annoyed by hearing from him over and over again. He was cheated, he's a victim, it's the deep state, etc., etc. The other school of thought does say that, as Donald Trump himself said the other day, to one of his attorneys apparently, any publicity is good as long as you're not being accused of being a pedophile. Now, that's quite a statement to make, isn't it?
Indeed.
I mean, what that means is that his supporters will forgive him for almost anything, and the question then becomes just how powerful, how important, how many of those supporters are there really? And that's a question that we'll be discovering over the next months.
And I mean, if you look at Trump's following, it's more of a cult following, and we've seen with the insurrection, and even some of his comments that he's making, you know, talking about if things go this way, I expect you to act this way. There is a certain fear around his cult following and what it can do going forward.
Well, the last time we had that kind of operation, that was January 6th a year ago. I think that a lot of police departments, most especially the ones in Washington and New York, are rather more aware and attuned to these possibilities than they might have been 2 years ago. But also, you know, there is some feeling, and at least in things that I have read and surveying that I have seen, that people are getting, and some candidates now, some declared candidates for the Republican nomination that are saying, in effect, yes, Donald Trump has been badly done by the justice system, et cetera, but now it's time to move on. We have more important issues to deal with. The country's circumstances are at risk. I'm sorry, I'm being attacked by my cat. My apologies. And if that's true, and if people begin to say that was last year or the year before, it's time to move on, we do have important business, then the sting in Donald Trump's tail, if you'll take the scorpion metaphor, will have been significantly weakened. But a lot of it's going to depend, I think, right from the start on just how good a case the district attorney in Manhattan can make when he actually goes to trial. Because there are apparently something on the order of more than 24 specific charges listed in his charge sheet. And what they are, nobody exactly knows yet in the media. Nobody knows yet among Donald Trump's attorneys, for that matter. They will find out tomorrow in the courtroom in New York City, along with the rest of us.
Something that might totally be unrelated, Brooks, but the timing of Twitter and other social media, Elon Musk allowing Trump back into social media, do you think that will also play a role here going forward with, as I said, Trump and his followers who really believe in him? And I'm sure there's many Americans, depends on how much, who would want to see him be re-elected as president.
Well, I mean, if we take recent history, of course, the last time he ran, he lost. And there's no indication that there's been a giant sea change in opinion about that he should become president yet again. I think that's where we have to start. The fact that a newly declared candidate for the nomination, former governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson, said he just declared his candidacy, and he said, it really is time for us to move away from this. There are too many other things to worry about. And Nikki Haley who was formerly governor of South Carolina and then ambassador to the UN, has said something close to that. A number of other people who are not candidates, notably Chris Christie, who was governor of New Jersey and at one point was a close friend of Donald Trump, has basically said the same thing, only in rougher language, probably not useful for television here. I mean, we can do that off air maybe.
Yeah,
but,
no, absolutely. So we've seen visuals of Donald Trump just arriving and heavily guarded there. He just waved to, I guess, at the Trump Towers, waved to some of his friends and to the media there. But Brooks, what's the expectation? As you said, it's an arraignment, so he's expected to plead. We still don't know some of the charges, but one would expect to plead not guilty in this instance, isn't it?
Yeah, he's going to plead not guilty on all charges. He can't afford to plead guilty on any of them, really, because I suspect the way the thing has been structured is if you plead guilty on charge one, then all the rest of them begin to have a domino effect. I think what his attorneys, and he's just added yet another attorney to his ever-growing collection of legal talent, somebody who was well known in New York City circumstances as a senior trial attorney, which says to some degree that people were not happy with the attorneys he had. But I think the attorneys for the would-be defendant, Donald Trump, are really afraid that in a courtroom setting, he will begin to say things. He will splutter and shoot off like a rocket in an effort to somehow convince the judge to be less than neutral. But the judge, of course, has the authority to ban television cameras or let them in. The judge also has the authority, despite the First Amendment rights of free speech, to issue a gag order to prevent Donald Trump from saying anything truly negative about the district attorney, about the judicial system, about the court generally, or about himself as a judge. And if Donald Trump goes off like a rocket and does any of those things, you can expect perhaps a limited gag order. You can also expect that no matter what the rulings are along the way, that his attorneys are going to appeal them. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound a little bit like somebody else's Stalingrad strategy?
Absolutely. We've seen that before in South Africa. Just quickly then, Brooks, one last comment. I mean, on the issue of the judge, Trump has already even said that Merchant hates him, that the judge is, speaking to Truth Social, he was talking about how already the judge hates him. And those are the kind of things that we expect from a Trump who already is trying to play into the gallery, isn't it?
That's absolutely the case. I think that's actually a very bad strategy, because you can create a climate where the judge, the arraignment judge, and then the trial judge begin to look with suspicion or disdain or even disgust at motions by your attorney to rule something out of appropriate or whatever, you really want the judge on your side rather than having sworn at him as if he's your mortal enemy. That's, to my mind and my understanding of the law, that's really bad strategy.
Brooks, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for coming through to talk to us. U.S. analyst Brooks Spector talking to us about Donald Trump as he arrives in New York.